Before Eden had a name, before Babel had a tower, before a single king wore a crown or a single law was carved into stone, there was a war that no army fought and no sword decided. It was a war fought in a council chamber above the clouds of Sumer, between two brothers who could not agree on what a human being was worth. Most people who have heard the word Anunnaki think of it as a curiosity, a strange name from a broken tablet, dusted off by fringe theorists and forgotten again by morning. They assume it is a footnote to the story of who made us. But the oldest texts on Earth, older than Genesis, older than the flood story most of the world knows by another name, do not describe a single creator shaping man in quiet solitude. They describe an argument, a vote, a committee of beings who did not want to work anymore and who built something to work in their place and who could not agree, afterward, on whether that something deserved to live. The tablets call them the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, and at the center of their war stood two brothers, Enki, god of fresh water and wisdom, patient, curious, drawn to the thing he had made, and Enlil, god of air and command, absolute in his authority, and certain that the thing his brother had made was a mistake that would one day have to be corrected. The chamber was carved from stone the color of a storm that had not yet broken. The Anunnaki had come down to Earth generations before to mine the gold that their dying world required, and for generations they had done the digging themselves, backs bent in the heat, hands blistered on ore. Now they stood in a circle, exhausted, and Enlil's voice cut through the silence like a blade dragged across rock. "We did not come here to be slaves to the earth," he said. "We came to rule it." A murmur moved through the gathered gods, a low current of agreement. The minds had broken something in them. Even gods, it turned out, could be worn down by labor that never ended. It was Enki who spoke next, and when he spoke, the chamber went still, because Enki rarely spoke without already knowing where his words would lead. "Then let us make a worker," he said. "Not from nothing, from something already here. Clay from the riverbed and blood from one of our own, mixed together, given breath. Let it labor in our place, and let it never know what it was made for." No one in that chamber asked what the worker would feel, waking into a life it had not chosen, built to serve a purpose it would never be told. That question belonged to no one yet. It would belong to Enki alone, and it would cost him everything. The birthing house stood apart from the council chamber, low and windowless, lit by a single flame that never seemed to flicker, no matter how the air moved around it. Ninhursag, keeper of birth, mixed the clay herself, while Enki watched, his hands folded, his expression unreadable. 14 pieces of clay lay in a row before her, 7 for one side, 7 for the other, and into each she pressed a measure of divine blood, drawn from a god who had been sacrificed for exactly this purpose, so that the worker would carry something of heaven inside its earth. "It will not be like us," Ninhursag said. Not quite a question. "No," Enki answered. "It will be better at surviving than we are, and worse at knowing why." The first cry that came from that room was not a cry of pain. It was the sound of lungs discovering air for the first time, a sound so raw and so unrehearsed that even Enki, who had planned every part of this, took a step back as if the ground beneath him had shifted. Something new had entered the world, and it had not asked permission to exist, and already, in the space of a single breath, it belonged to no one and everyone at once. A creator who watches his creation take its first breath is never quite the same God again. The workers multiplied faster than anyone in that chamber had prepared for. Villages rose along the rivers within a handful of generations, then cities, then the sound of them, the constant hum of human voices, human tools, human fires burning through the night. Enlil could not sleep. He stood at the high window of his temple in Nippur and listened to it rise up from the plains below, a noise that never stopped, that pressed against the silence he had once ruled without question. "They do not rest," he said to his attendants. "They do not stop. It is like the earth itself has grown restless." He called for drought first. The rivers thinned, the fields cracked, and still the noise did not stop, because Enki, quietly, without announcing it to the council, taught a favored man named Atrahasis to dig deeper wells. Enlil called for plague next, Fever swept through the cities like fire through dry grass, and still the noise did not stop, because Enki whispered through the walls of one man's house the names of the herbs that would break the fever before dawn. Enlil called for famine a third time and forbade the rain, and watched the fields turn to dust for 2 full seasons. And still, the noise did not stop, because Enki taught the people to store grain in the years before the famine came, as though he had known it was coming before Enlil had even decided to send it. 3 times Enlil moved to erase what his brother had made. 3 times, humanity did not simply survive, it learned, adapted, grew a little more resilient than it had been the time before. Each failure did not humble Enlil, it hardened him. He called the council together a final time, and this time he did not ask. "I will not fail a 4th time," he said. "Bind every god in this room to silence. No warning reaches the earth, no whisper, no dream, no wind carries word of what is coming. This time, the water finishes what the drought and the plague and the famine could not." One by one, the gods swore the oath. Enki swore it too, his face giving away nothing, his eyes fixed on some point beyond the chamber walls, already, perhaps, deciding how a promise could be kept in the letter and broken completely in the spirit. That night, Enki walked to the reed hut of a man named Ziusudra, and he did not go inside, because a god who breaks an oath outright can still be punished by the gods who hold it. Instead, he stood outside the reed wall and spoke, not to the man, but to the wall itself, as though thinking aloud to no one. "Reed wall," he said, "listen to me. Tear down your house and build a boat. Abandon your possessions and save what breathes. The flood will come from the heavens upon all the kingdoms of man to destroy the seed of life." Inside the hut, Ziusudra pressed his ear to the wall and heard every word, and understood that a warning delivered to a wall is still a warning received by the man standing beside it. He began building the next morning, 7 days of labor with no rest, sealing pitch into the seams of a boat shaped like nothing that had ever floated on that river before, a cube built for surviving, not for sailing. The sky broke on the 7th day. Not rain, at first, but a wall of black cloud that swallowed the sun so completely that the birds went silent mid-flight, as if the sky itself had forgotten how to hold light. Then the water came, and it did not stop for 6 days and 6 nights, and the noise that had kept Enlil awake for generations was finally, terribly silenced. Even the gods wept. Ishtar, who had helped shape the first humans in the birthing house, cried out that she should never have agreed to their making if this was how it would end, that a mother does not consent to the drowning of her own children, no matter what oath binds her tongue. The other gods, hungry, having lost the offerings that human hands once burned for them, crouched at the edge of the ruined world like starving animals waiting for a scrap. On the 7th day, the water calmed, and a boat came to rest on the shoulder of a mountain, and a door creaked open, and Ziusudra stepped out into a world made of mud and silence. When Enlil learned that a man still lived, his fury was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was cold. He stood before the council and demanded to know which of them had broken the oath, and every god in that chamber looked away from him, except one. "How did he escape?" Enlil said. "Speak, or I will know who to blame without being told." Enki did not lower his eyes. "I did not tell a man," he said. "I told a wall. What the wall chose to share with the man on the other side of it was never my doing." The silence that followed was longer than any silence that had come before it. Enlil could have struck him down where he stood. Instead, something in his fury broke apart and reformed into something closer to grief, because he understood, in that moment, that his brother had not defied him out of pride. He had defied him because he could not stand in a room and do nothing while something he loved was erased from the world. That is the part of this story that almost never survives the retelling. It is remembered as a flood, a punishment, a cleansing. But at its center, it was never really about water. It was about 2 ways of holding power. One brother who believed that anything he had authority over existed to serve his comfort and could be discarded the moment it became inconvenient. and another brother who believed that to create something is to become responsible for it, permanently, even when obedience would have been safer, even when silence would have cost him nothing. The oldest war in these texts is not between gods and men. It is between two definitions of what it means to have power over another living thing. Enlil's power asked, "What does this cost me?" Enki's power asked, "What do I owe it?" And the terrifying, quiet truth buried in these tablets is that both of those gods still exist inside every person who has ever held authority over someone weaker than themselves. A parent, a leader, an employer, anyone who could choose to erase an inconvenience or choose to protect it instead. You have stood in Ziusudra's place more times than you probably realize. You have felt the flood rising around you, the diagnosis, the job that vanished, the year that took more than it gave back, and wondered whether anything in this universe was paying attention, or whether you were simply the noise that something more powerful wished would finally stop. And you have also stood in Enki's place, quietly, without credit, without permission, choosing to warn someone, to help someone, to protect someone, even when it would have cost you nothing, to look away and let the water take them. Every time you did that, you were not being naive. You were doing the oldest, defiant thing a living being can do. You were refusing to let power decide, on its own, who gets to survive it. The tablets never tell us if Enlil forgave his brother. They only tell us that humanity kept building, kept burning offerings into the night, kept making the noise that had once threatened to end them. So the question the oldest story on Earth leaves behind is not really about gods, or floods, or clay mixed with blood in a windowless room above the Euphrates. It is about which voice you would have listened to if you had heard both of them arguing over your fate before you were even born, the one that wanted you gone because you were inconvenient, or the one that broke an oath in the dark just so you would live long enough to ask the question yourself.